Sometimes in life we just suffer. Sometimes it's from being totally withdrawn, or so much stress that we are totally anxious, or so tired that we are totally burnt out. But our current position is not our final destination. No, indeed. There's hope. So whether it's your personal life, your career, your relationship, your business, or your job, we say there's reason to believe again. And we present from Andy's Personal Development, the Breakout Room. It's the place for health, happiness, and prosperity. Stay tuned for more.
Hi, people. This is Andy of Andy's Personal Development, live in what is considered as the break room in our podcasting history and our podcasting documentation. Today, we have a special guest. You can see her on the screen with me, and her name is Catherine Llewellyn. Let me tell you a bit about her. She's a transformation catalyst, humanistic psychologist, writer, podcaster, free thinker, intuitive healer, conscious dance facilitator, Pilowa teacher, mentor, organizational transformational strategist, and a cat lover. There is so much more I can tell you about our guest Catherine this morning, but we would like her to be in the spotlight as she is the person that we're going to focus on today. And she's going to tell us a whole lot more about herself and the work that she's doing and the impact she expects it to have in the world. So, welcome, Catherine. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Andy. I'm delighted to be here.
Delighted, and I'm delighted to see you. Yes. So, let me begin by asking you, what to you is the most important aspect of your legacy as far as the work that you're doing is concerned? And you have so much accomplishments behind your name and beside your name, but if there's anything that you'd like to stand out, what would it be for you, Catherine?
Well, it's just a small thing, Andy. It's I would like to do my best to help with the evolution of consciousness for humanity.
Right.
Just a small detail.
That's it. It's so simple. And how do you plan to do that? Or are you continuously in the process of developing that as a detail that you would love to see happen and become a reality?
That's been the driving force, really, in my work for a long time. And I feel like a wise person said to me the other day that we have two aspects to our life mission, and one of those is our own development and expansion and how we show up, and the other being the effect we're having in the world, the contribution we're making in the world. So I'm constantly looking to elevate my own consciousness,
right,
in whatever way I can, and try and keep an eye on myself in that regard. And I'm in my work, whether it's working one-to-one with somebody or in a group or on my podcast, or if I'm giving someone energy treatments or whatever, all of that has the same purpose behind it, which is to help people make the shift in their own consciousness that's the one they need for their next step. Because I believe, and again, this is something someone else said the other day, that collective raising of consciousness is an individual responsibility. And I really believe that. So I try to follow that in my own self, in my own life. And I also seek to help my clients do the same thing, assuming that's what they want to do. You know, people who want to do that are more likely to end up talking to me. If they want to do something else, they'll probably be talking to somebody else.
Yes, understood. So, Catherine, tell us, what are the benefits, therefore, then, of people having this higher level of consciousness?
Well, the immediate answer that comes up is that there's a more immediate connection to the divine, because the divine, or the higher self, or the soul, or God, or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
is always there. It's just a question of whether or not we're receptive to it, whether we're in the right space to actually notice it and receive it.
Yeah.
And when we're stuck in what you might call lower levels of consciousness, and we're concerned about all sorts of other things,
Yeah.
you know, what some people call the gross matter of corporeal life.
Yes.
You know, when we're in there, which we have to, you know, we have to get the washing up done, we have to service the car, we have to pay the mortgage, whatever. And sitting and meditating isn't necessarily going to get that done.
Yeah.
So it has to be done. But yeah, when we're able to connect with that much higher level of consciousness, that opens a door for us to the miraculous, the divine, the blissful. You know, that's the ultimate benefit.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, all the knock-on benefits from that are things like improved physical health, improved emotional life, improved relationships, more of a sense of knowing our own path, following our own path.
Yes.
It's easier to be true to ourselves. It's easier to let go of self-sabotage.
Yes.
You know, all of these things, which are, it's a more direct way to come at some of those things, I think, although it may seem like a less direct way.
I understand, and I appreciate your response. That is very timely and very insightful. So, Catherine, what are some of the things that you have recognized that are challenges or hindrances that people are faced with, so that they seem to have a problem in getting to that state? Now, I know it's a process. It does not happen overnight, and there are things that you can do to help them to get there. But in the initial stages, what challenges do you see people having with regards to understanding the benefits, as you just explained, to that level of consciousness?
I don't think anyone can understand those benefits unless they experience them.
Okay.
You know, the best they can do is think to themselves, oh, that sounds interesting. Oh, that sounds appealing. You know, I think the attraction is more of a felt sense. You know, I tend to talk, I tend to have people approach me who are, they can feel something in themselves. They can feel they're being called in some way. Something's calling to them. And they might have given that a name. They might be clear what that is, or they may not be.
Yes.
But it's almost like their spirit is in some sort of state of readiness. And I think I think some people are born in that state of readiness. I actually think we're all born in that state of readiness, in fact, and that we kind of lose it to one extent or another. You know, there's this big issue of you're born and the only thing you're interested in to begin with is yourself, your belly.
Yeah.
You know, am I being fed? Am I safe? Am I being loved? We don't have those words. We just know that's what we want. And over time, we begin to notice there are other human beings around.
Yes.
You know, and to begin with, it's the mother and maybe the father. And all we care about in regard to them is, are they giving me what I want and need? That's all we care about. We're 100% selfish in that regard.
Yeah.
But we are also completely wide open and curious. But of course, as time goes on, and of course, we're completely authentic at that point, because we've got no reason not to be. But as time goes on, we realize we're actually part of a collective, a society, a family, a culture. We begin to realize that unless we kind of adapt, we're going to be thrown out. We're going to be metaphorically left on the side of the mountain to starve if we don't kind of find a way of fitting in to some extent.
Yes, yes.
But because we're so young, we don't know how to do that in a sophisticated way without kind of suppressing ourselves to some degree.
Yeah.
And this all happens on the unconscious level. So by the time we reach adulthood, we've kind of semi-squashed ourselves
Yeah.
to some extent in order simply to show up in an acceptable way for our tribe, whatever version that is for
Yeah.
us. So, you know, and then what tends to happen as people go through life is the spirit is still there. The spirit still wants to flourish and be real and authentic and have freedom. And they can, for most people, what happens at some point is a sense of, okay, there's some sort of gap between this sort of free spirit that is my truth and what I'm doing and how I'm behaving and how things are in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So what's that gap? What's that about? And what am I going to do about it?
Wow. Yeah. I gather what you're saying, and I firmly believe that having that childlike innocence is extremely important for us because, and this is just my personal take from it, Catherine, it takes us away from being judgmental. It takes us away from employing and enjoying, as you say, what the tribe likes, what the tribe approves of, what the tribe wants to do. But at the same time, is it coming from a place of reality, a deep conviction that's based on our intrinsic personal values? Or is it just a matter of pleasing the masses, pleasing the Joneses, as the case might be? So I guess at the end of the day, the important thing, as you are stressing on, is in that moment of consciousness, it is righteous to remain as innocent as you were when you were younger and nothing was tainted, so that you can keep your thoughts as pure as you possibly can. But that's a heck of a challenge.
Yeah.
I
Well, exactly,
understand that.
because the sophistication we've developed is of tremendous
Yes,
value also.
yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
In,
Wow.
in
That's
fact,
deep.
I'll just share something early on
Sure.
in 2020,
Yeah.
when lockdown was going on in the UK and in
Mm-hmm.
lots of other places. I went on an online course. It was a 6-week course. It was fantastic. And one of
Right.
the things that the guy did was he gave us a meditation. It was
Mm-hmm.
one of those things where you close your eyes and he takes you through a scenario.
Yeah.
And it was basically an innocence meditation. It was to take us back into a state of innocence.
Okay.
And I remember I love those things anyway. I think they're wonderful.
Yes.
So I just love
Yes.
it. And I came out of that meditation, and it was the summer, actually. It was late spring, early summer. It was beautiful weather. And at the end of meditation, he said, okay, just relax and maybe go for a walk outside. Don't head straight back onto the computer. Okay, so
Yes.
I just went for a wander around the garden. I do not have a very big garden, but it took me nearly an hour to walk around the garden because
Right.
every step there was something that was absolutely blowing my mind with miraculous beauty. You know, a little tiny yellow rose, or just beautiful, beautiful things in the garden that normally somebody would look at and go, well, that's a bit of a messy garden, right? And that feeling of innocence is just so expansive and vivid and beautiful. And I can still remember that exact experience as I'm describing it to you
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
So I think that thing of having anchors within us where we kind
Yes.
of remember these particularly important states of mind
Yeah.
is incredibly helpful. And in fact, something I'm doing on a new workshop I'm about to start is taking people through a process whereby they create their own anchors and activators, so that when they're out in life, if they find themselves kind of losing that connection, they've got a technique or a tool to actually reactivate that kind of freedom of spirit and take themselves back to it. That's their own personal tailor-made anchor and activator for it. You know, because it's finding our own ways of coming back in that's the answer, I think, rather than trying to find a book that tells you how to. That's a great place to start. But ideally, we get to a place where we've developed our own personal prescription, if you like.
Yes.
Like our own favorite dish. You know, if we're someone who likes to cook, we've got our own favorite dish that we make the way no one else makes it.
Wonderful.
And that's what our life should be.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful, Catherine. Thank you for sharing. Appreciate that. And I want to switch gears a little bit and look at another aspect of your amazing career. Tell us, what is the basic concepts of humanistic psychology?
I thought you might ask me that. So humanistic psychology was developed as a kind of an antidote to psychoanalysis,
Okay.
because psychoanalysis is absolutely wonderful and very useful for a lot of people, but not for everybody.
Okay.
Because what you're doing is you're going back in time to try and find what screwed you up as a child, essentially,
Ah,
and go back and
yes.
unravel trauma and everything else. Now, we don't all
Mhm.
need to do that. And for some
Right.
of us, that's
Yes.
actually counterproductive, time consuming, and expensive.
Mm.
So what happened was, and this was, I think, in the 60s or early 70s, a whole bunch of psychologists got together and they said, we think there might be another way that's more useful for us now. Because psychoanalysis started in the 1930s, and in those days, that's all there was, and it was what was needed. But decades later, something else was needed. And they said, no, we feel that actually the majority of adults, in particular, are much better educated now. They're much more self-aware now than they were back then. That people at the very least have the possibility of knowing that they want to grow and learn, knowing why they want to do that, knowing what they want to develop in themselves, and knowing basically how they want to do it. So basically,
Right.
they're not the patient anymore. They're the client.
Ah, yes.
And they are going to want to work with a practitioner who isn't sitting behind them while they're on the couch making
Mhm.
notes.
Yeah.
They want to sit opposite somebody in armchairs,
Ah,
you know, having a conversation between two adults, like a
right.
collaborative
Yes.
thing that they're doing. It's a relationship, that through that relationship, insights and transformation and so forth can take place, but based on the assumption that that client is already amazing as they are.
Yes.
Because we are, frankly, the
Yes.
fact we
Yes.
exist is phenomenal. So we are extraordinary things, human beings, and there's a lot of space for growth. So it was all
Right.
about that space for growth rather than try and fix what's wrong with you, and the client having the authority in the relationship, and the practitioner being authentic and available and vulnerable and connected and real and authentic. So it's a completely different approach from psychoanalysis. And of course, you can imagine there was a lot of arguing and fighting and shouting at the time this first came out,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
because the other people were saying, no, 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 the therapist knows best. And they go, I'm not so really, do they really know best about that person's life?
Wow. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Catherine. There are so many deep things about life that from time to time we are challenged with. And sometimes we are even puzzled by our own lives in terms of the philosophy of how we see things and how things actually happen. And it is sometimes so different that we try to create a balance. How can people bridge the gap between inner growth, personal growth, and external growth with regards to the careers, their relationships, or their work?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say to that is, if it looks like something has to be bridged between those two things,
Yeah.
what that tells me is that that person is not yet fully committed to their true path.
Mm,
Because if they are, and when I say committed, first they've got to find it. So
right. Yeah.
if someone's not committed to their truth path, it's not because they necessarily know what it is and they're ignoring it. Usually when someone finds their true path, usually there's nothing to do except follow it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question.
Yes.
And at that point, there is no bridging to be done, because the two things are in alignment. They're aligned, and the one
Yeah.
thing feeds the other.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing I'll say, which might sound contradictory, is when somebody does find their true path, usually the first thing that happens is they go, oh, fantastic, now I know what I'm doing. And off they go. The next
Yeah.
thing they realize is that actually they've always been on their path.
Ah, very
because
good.
it brought them to where they are now to realize what
Mm-hmm.
their path is.
Mm-hmm.
But because they weren't conscious of it, there were those apparent conflicts going on and imbalances going on. But we all have to go through that in order to reach the place where it makes sense. And actually, then we know, oh, right, I'm on the path now.
Yeah, wonderful. I love it. Thank you. So let's look at another aspect of what you do. Piloa. I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
It's
Tell
funny
us
you say
about
that
it.
because the teacher, whose name is
Yeah.
Kachina Ma'an, she's
Uh-huh.
Australian.
Uh-huh.
She says she doesn't care how you pronounce it.
Oh,
And Pelawa, most people call it Pelawa. Some
Peloa.
people call it Palawa. Pelawa does not care how you pronounce it.
All right.
All Pelawa cares about is if you feel the Pelawa call, do you answer?
Ah,
That's all it cares about. So
okay.
this thing about and everyone talks about this, Eckhart Tolle and everybody else, they all say the same. The next stage of our evolution as a species is the evolution of consciousness and the
Mm.
awakening. So
Yeah.
Pelawa is an energy technique specifically for that purpose. So Pelawa came into this level of existence in 2003, where
Mm-hmm.
Kachina, she'd been a spiritual teacher and healer for many, many years. And you know how some people get kind of instructions
Yeah.
from wherever they're coming from.
Uh-huh.
And she got this instruction saying, Kachina, you've got to start teaching this now to other people. You've got to train practitioners.
Yeah.
And she'd go, okay. And then over a period of time with visions and dreams and so forth, she was given the information as to exactly, precisely how to do that. So she was given the 7 Pelawa symbols. She was given the level 1 and level 2 attunement. She was given how to run the workshop, what to cover, what processes and meditations and activations to use. And then she started training practitioners.
Wow.
And in 15 years later, a very good friend of mine came back from Australia, where she'd been for 15 years. She's Australian.
Mhm. Yeah.
And she'd been training with Kachina. And we met up and I said, what have you been doing? She said, Pelawa. I said, what's that? She said, it means radical shift in consciousness.
Ah.
And I said, I want to do it. I was one of those, I don't need to know anything else. How do I do it? There's a 2-day workshop. I said, great. When's the next one? She said, next week. I said, great. I want to do it.
Yeah.
And it's a very powerful, direct intervention from source energy to the consciousness of the recipient.
Okay.
And it's so powerful and so pure that the practitioner is not permitted to interfere in any way.
Mm.
The practitioner opens up the space, calls in the Pelawa interacts with the consciousness of the recipient, and they kind of contract together, all at below conscious level,
Yeah.
for what that person needs to make the next shift for their highest potential. The practitioner has no idea of the content of that contract.
Right.
The practitioner does not touch the client. It's a hands-off. And the Pelawa guides the practitioner to move, but they don't know what those movements are doing. They don't know exactly. They are just almost like a puppet. So as a practitioner, you have to really get over your ego to do this and not be the brilliant, fabulous, spiritual teacher. And then the client gets whatever they need and they come out of it. They may have a very vivid experience. They may come out thinking, I just fell asleep. I have no idea what happened. But then over the following days and weeks and months, there's an unfolding which happens as a result of the shift of consciousness that will have occurred.
Wow. That's deep. That's really, really deep. And I'm sure it would resonate with some people. Everybody, I think, Catherine, to some extent is on a path of truth. We are all seeking and searching. I personally think I have found my truth and it resonates with me. It aligns with my personal values. But if someone is new to all of this and they are still really seeking and searching, and the level of curiosity is quite high, where would you suggest that they start from? They have to start from somewhere.
I would suggest they start from whatever they find most appealing.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I've got a conversation with somebody this week
Yeah.
who has put themselves in my diary. They can do that on my website. They can put
Okay.
themselves in my diary.
Okay.
And I looked, and there's a thing which says, is there something you wanted to speak about?
Yes.
They want to speak about finding their true path and living as the true person they are. That's what
Right.
they want to speak about.
Okay. Okay.
So we will begin by having a little conversation about that. You know, she'll
Mhm.
tell me more about what that means to her.
Uh-huh.
And then she'll probably say, how can you help me? And I'll say, well, you could have a Pelawa treatment.
Mm-hmm.
You could go straight to the Pelawa workshop. A lot of people do that.
Right.
You could have some transformation coaching with me.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in the UK, you can come and dance with me, conscious
Ah.
dance, which is transformational.
Okay.
You can come and do my Freedom of Spirit workshop in the autumn.
Mm-hmm.
Does one of those things call you?
Ah.
And the person will then say, I don't know why, but I feel like I want to try this one.
Mm.
I say, great, start there.
Okay.
Start there.
Okay. I get it.
Or they
I
might
get
say,
it.
none of that appeals to me,
Oh, yeah. There's
right?
that
They
other
might say
option
that.
too.
And,
Yes.
but they usually will then say, but I'm clearer now about what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know where to go next to look for
Mm-hmm.
what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And I may be back.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. So I just want to share with you a video right now, and I want you to give us some feedback on it. So let me see if I can bring it up and find it. Oh, here
Okay.
it is. Bang,
This is
bang.
different.
Yeah, this is different and original. Am I sharing?
I believe that the very, very first thing that we need if we want to have a good life or transform is a space to be exactly who we are and how we are in any given moment. And in our world, particularly in the Western world, we put so much energy into being somebody else or being different or being better. And the trouble with that is it disempowers us because it cuts us off from the root of our truth. So I'm looking to provide spaces for people to be exactly as they are and to really connect with that, integrate with that. And from that place, then they naturally tend to transform because we all do. When we have that space, transformation is not only possible, it's almost inevitable.
Okay.
Well, I don't know
Great.
where you found that strange looking woman. Yeah, that was me on
Is
as a
that
guest.
another version of you?
Yeah, that was a clip from a podcast I went on as a guest
Okay.
with
Okay.
JJ DeGeronimo. Amazing woman.
Okay.
She's made it her life mission
Uh-huh.
to help what she refers to as light workers
Okay.
to be successful.
Right, right.
And she's a fantastic, charismatic, wonderful woman. So yeah, that clip is all about, it's actually all about my brand, which is being space,
Yes.
as you probably noticed.
Mhm.
So yeah, that whole idea of, I've noticed that a lot of the value people get and have got when they worked with me occurs just literally in the way things are set up for the work.
Okay. Okay.
You know, just the we're somewhere quiet.
Mm.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
They're separated from their normal life.
Mm-hmm.
There's space. There's nothing to be achieved. We pay attention to how are you now? How are things now? How do you feel? What matters to you? Just space to be. And for a lot of people, that on its own is all they need.
Yeah.
But of course, it's also the best way in, really. I mean, all of the work I do supports that. Whether you're lying down with your eyes closed, having a pelvic treatment, that is space to be. But if you're dancing, that is space to be. If you're in a coaching session, you've got space to be, and the same on the workshops. So yeah, it's a very, very powerful foundational element of the work.
Yeah, interesting. So tell us a bit about the dance stuff. The dance has so many genres, I think is the right word to use.
Mm.
But this one is unique. What is the real prompt, unique aspect of what you do, and how can someone benefit from it?
So the dance work I'm doing now, I was actually trained as a conscious dance facilitator by Gabrielle Roth, who some of your listeners will have heard of, I'm sure. And I then followed her particular modality for a number of years, and then I developed my own version, which is called Being, Moving, Seeing.
Right.
And in that modality, what you'll do, we usually start with some sort of sacred reading, which takes somebody into like that meditative space.
Yeah.
And then I'm using music which supports movement, but without providing any direction for the movement.
Okay.
So in other words, it helps somebody to flow into however their body would like to move. So if you saw a group of people working with me in this regard, it might look like they're all listening to different music because they're all moving differently.
Okay.
And there's, so for example, somebody might be moving in a very kind of funky kind of a way, or someone else might be in a very sort of flowing, spiritual looking kind of a way, or someone else might be lying on the floor, just kind of rolling and moving around.
Okay.
So it's about allowing the energy that's within, however it is in this moment, to come out through the movement without censoring and without directing it. And this is very, very, it's very healing, it's very enjoyable, and it's very liberating. And people say, at the end, I usually do a meditation, and I will usually create a meditation for that group based on what I observed in the movement. So I'll create a meditation that, if you like, locks in the magic of the dance that I witnessed. I go out and dance in amongst the group rather than giving instruction. So what that means is I'm feeling the group, they're feeling me, and there's a kind of there's a collective thing going on as well as a series of individual things going on.
Right.
And it's very grounding, it's very healing, it's very enjoyable, it's very liberating, and it's an experience of relating as well. It's like a community experience as well.
Yeah. That's interesting. Over the centuries, dance has been used for so many different things, to send messages, as a form of greeting, as a form of worship. Sometimes it's used to convey something that you cannot speak in actual words. It provides a language all of its own. But in this particular instance, you're talking about a release of some sort of energy that someone may have that they may need help with. And this provides that medium for that release of energy.
Yes.
Interesting. Wow. So Catherine, when you look around and you see what is happening in the world today, basically we look at the social media platform, we look at AI, we look at everything basically that is happening holistically, and sometimes it appears as though things are not going so good for planet Earth. But what do you say to people who may have such a grim outlook? Do they need to come off the social media? Do they need to stay off the television and create some form of positive endearment for themselves? Or how do you help them arrive to a place where they develop coping skills and make decisions that whatever they allow to get into their mindset, it's more for their benefit and upliftment rather than depression?
I think I mean, obviously it's different for every single person, because some
Right.
people are tuning into the negative because that's what they like doing and they enjoy it.
Ah,
There is, in fact, have you ever come across transactional analysis?
yes,
Have you
I
heard of
have.
that? Okay,
Yes.
fine. So have you heard about pastimes?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a pastime called Ain't It Awful?
Mm,
Do you know that one?
no.
It's okay. So Ain't It Awful is a pastime. It's a way of passing time and avoiding your actual experience in the moment.
Wow.
Right. So Ain't It Awful is a great one because it's, oh God, So there's the war still going on in Ukraine. Yeah, but
Yes.
what about Israel?
Yeah.
Honestly, what do you think of the Palestinians? Yeah, but
Mm,
racism, and it can
mm,
go on and on and on. And no
yeah.
matter what anyone
Yeah.
says in response, there's
Mm-hmm.
another bad thing. Now,
Yes.
I actually know some people who do that for fun.
Wow.
That's how they entertain themselves.
Okay.
And if you talk to them about the possibility of not doing it, they get really annoyed. So that's what they want to do, right? So people like that, bless them. I just don't want them in my living room past 6 o'clock in the evening.
I hear you. I hear you.
Okay.
I hear
But
you.
then
I
you
hear
do
you.
get people who are actually very dispirited. And I was talking to
Yeah.
somebody in Virginia the other
Mm-hmm.
day,
Mm-hmm.
and she was talking about that there's an awful lot of anxiety over there
Yes.
in relation to the upcoming election and
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of other things going on.
Yeah.
And so there are people who are actually suffering.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to do something about that, the first step is they've got to decide they want to do something about that.
Yes.
Because not everybody does, or they're not prepared to do the work if
Mm.
they do. So if somebody comes to me and says they've got that going on with them and they want to do something about it, I would probably start by helping them to explore what it is that their concern is about. What is it about? How much of it is actually their own feeling, and how much of it is them taking on other people's feeling?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because some people are genuinely triggered by things going on outside of themselves, in the wider environment, and it's kind of pointing them at some inner distress that they have. Now, if that's the case, it's a really good idea to investigate what that is
Mm-hmm.
and just see, is some of that being caused by things that are happening in your life right now?
Yeah.
Because if they are, let's examine it. If it's not, if it's you kind of wallowing in something that happened decades ago that you can't let go of, then it's more a question of, well, how do you bring yourself into the present?
Yeah.
Do you want to go back and fix some of that stuff, or do you want to bring yourself into the present, or do you want to do both? I know somebody at the moment who is suffering, not from the things you're talking about, but because of things that happened in their childhood. And this person has discovered that talking about this trauma that happened doesn't help them. They've discovered that responsibly used psychedelics help them because it brings them into the moment, and conscious dance helps them, and also touch work, like tantra processes where you're doing kind of conscious, consensual, non-sexual touch in workshops and things like that. All of that is helping him because it's bringing him into his body and out away from the kind of monkey mind that's going on and on and on about how awful it was.
Yeah.
And it's bringing him into his body, and he's undergoing quite a lot of deep healing as a result.
Okay.
So each person's solution is different. For me personally, the way I view it is that existence is going on many levels simultaneously. And like the top level is what's obvious, what you can see on social media and things like that. And the
Mm-hmm.
bottom level is what you might call the source energy,
Yeah.
the vibration.
Right.
I tend to prefer to tune into more the source level, the vibration level,
Yes. Yes.
and work on that, my own vibration, and help other people to do the same thing. Now, in that place, it's all miraculous. Even if there are awful things going on in the world, it's not to deny them. It's that is that the narrative I want to put my energy into? No.
Mm.
I want to put my energy into the narrative of growth and the narrative of the miracle of life and the
Mm.
divine, and to invest into that and do my best to actually help bring that more into my consciousness and to the consciousness of the people I'm working with. So
Yeah.
I'm an activist, but I'm a completely different kind of activist that doesn't look like an activist, if that
I
makes
hear
sense.
you. Yeah, of course it makes sense, Catherine. Of course, of course. Wow. Wow. This has been a really engaging and fruitful conversation. I've enjoyed it thus far.
Me too.
And we just have about a few minutes to go. Why? Time goes so fast. I want to share something with you um, in terms of truth and transcendence, the podcast. But I don't think I have the technology to bring that up. But could you tell us a bit about the podcast, Truth and Transcendence? How did you arrive at the name, and what's the main message, the main focus of the podcast?
Okay, so I arrived at the name.
Yes.
There's a guy, I've forgotten his name now, very, very popular, successful podcaster.
Uh-huh.
He did a little side podcast on how to start your podcast.
Okay,
So,
okay,
so I went
okay.
through that, and there was an exercise in there, which is how to come up with the name of your podcast. And
Mm-hmm.
you come up with lots and lots of words, and then it takes you through and takes you through and takes you through, and eventually you end up with 2 words,
Yeah.
right? And that's how I came up with it. And I
Okay.
went, oh, I really like that. Why do I like it? So I reflected on that, and I said, that actually fits perfectly with my work, which is,
Mm-hmm.
if we want to transcend,
Yeah.
first we've got to tell the truth
Right.
about where we are now.
Yes.
We've got to connect with our truth. We've got to tell the truth about where we are now and
Mm-hmm.
connect with our truth about what matters to us, where we want to go. And until we've done that, we cannot transcend.
Right.
We can
Right.
only try and run away or suppress.
Mm.
So that's what it means. It means it's about connecting with our truth and having the opportunity of transcending. So
Okay.
every single one of my guests
Mm-hmm.
has had an example of that, a significant example of that in their own life,
Yeah.
in their own individual way, uniquely, completely different from mine. And many of them have had it happen more than once, like cycling through and cycling through and cycling through. So yeah, that's what it's for.
Okay. Wonderful. You have been an amazing guest, Catherine, and we really appreciate all the nuggets, the value that you have brought to the episode. And I want to give you the opportunity to share with the audience how they can make contact with you if they need your services for whatever reason, whatever area. It's so varied in terms of what you do. And I think it's really excellent stuff that you've been doing so far. We hope that you have much success continuing doing the work that you are doing.
Thank you.
But let me see if I can help a bit. But if this doesn't come out the way it should, you can tell them how they can make contact with you. What is the most effective way?
Yes, the best way is beingspace.world, which is the very first thing on that top line.
Yes.
Beingspace.world is my website,
Okay.
and everything I do is on there. You can access the
Yes.
podcast, YouTube. I've got
Uh-huh.
ebooks that are on there.
Yeah.
All my work, you can book on my workshops. You can book a pillow treatment, and you can book calls to talk to me about whatever it is that you need to talk to me about.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably the best place to go. But all of those links are good. Facebook.com beingspace.world, that's good as well. The
Mm-hmm.
YouTube channel, there's some stuff I've got that isn't on there yet, so you can go there. LinkedIn, I'm
Yeah.
not really using anymore.
Okay.
And the Truth and Transcendence podcast, you can find that on any app
Yeah.
in the usual way, but
All
it is
right.
also on the website. So
Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful, 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 wonderful indeed. Thank you for sharing. So,
thank you.
we have come to the end of this wonderful podcast interview, but I would like to give you, Catherine, just a minute or so. If you had the opportunity to speak to the entire populace, just about 8 billion people, and there's this message on your heart that you'd really love them to hear, what would you say to them?
You are loved.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. So, we have come to the end of this wonderful program. Our guest, Catherine Llewellyn, her information I've just shared with you, and you can make the opportunity or take the time to make contact with her. Reach out to her if you want to get involved in Piloa or the dancing or the bridge between human and social psychology and the balance between work and life. Yes, she can help you with all of that. So, on behalf of my guests, Catherine Llewellyn and Andy Charles, live here in the studio of Andy's Personal Development, this being the Breakout Room podcast, we say so long, Godspeed, God bless, bye for now, until next time. Take care, folks. Bye.